Why does Ron embody the spirit of Urusei Yatsura more than any other supporting character? And what major event of the story involving her has gone almost completely unnoticed before? Most people think Ron is just Lum's childhood friend and another supporting character, but they're missing the fact that she's the show's biggest driving force of chaos. From the time she stole away eternal youth from Ataru to her constantly driving Lum up the wall, let's see how Ron isn't just a side character, she's the driving force of the show's best moments. While she is not the central character like Lum or Ataru, she appears frequently throughout the story and has one of the most distinct personalities in the entire cast. In a series that is already full of strange personalities and chaotic characters, Ron still manages to stand out. When Rand was little, she would often get blamed for Lum's misdeeds, and therefore wrongly punished. This is something that the series shows in flashbacks and memories from their childhood. Lum would do something mischievous or reckless, and Rand would be the one who ended up getting in trouble for it. Because Lum was naturally energetic and impulsive, she would often cause problems without thinking about the consequences. Ron, who happened to be nearby, would often take the blame. Later, the guy she had a crush on, Ray, started dating Lum over her, and then Lum dumped him. This was another event that deeply affected Ran. Not only did Lum unintentionally get Ron punished as children, but she also ended up taking the boy Ron liked. Ron experienced these events as a series of personal betrayals. This sent Ron over the edge, and caused her to swear revenge on Lum. Her resentment built up over time and became one of the central motivations for her character. Unlike some antagonists, Ron's motivation is very personal. She wants revenge on Lum specifically. Ron has the power to suck out the youth of anyone she kisses and steal their vitality. This is one of her defining supernatural abilities, and it's also used for both comedy and plot development throughout the series. Therefore, her plan is to suck out the youth of Lum's boyfriend, Atari Moriboshi, and take Lum's love away from her. In Rand's mind, this would be the perfect revenge. Lum had taken something she cared about, so Rand would take something Lum cared about. However, after she kisses him, and he still seems fine, Rand moves away from that plan. This moment is actually quite interesting. Ataru's strange luck, resilience, or simply the absurd logic of the series prevents her plan from working the way she intended. When she sees that Ataru is still functioning normally, she abandons that particular idea. But she is still bitter and resentful toward Lum. Her feelings do not disappear overnight. Even though her revenge plan fails, her resentment toward Lum continues to influence how she behaves around her. Later, Ray shows up and starts spending more time with Ron. However, Ron still remains hostile and suspicious toward Lum. Even when things begin to improve in her life, she has difficulty letting go of the past. This is very realistic psychology. People who hold grudges for a long time often have trouble changing their perspective, even when circumstances improve. One day, when Ron gets sick, Lum comes over to help her. Even though Lum messes up and causes a mess, she stays with Ron all night and falls asleep by her bed. Lum's attempt to help her is clumsy and chaotic, which is completely consistent with her personality. But the important part is that she genuinely tries to take care of her. While in her bed, Ron remembers when Lum stayed by her side when she was sick as a kid. This memory becomes the turning point for Ron's feelings. She realizes that Lum never meant any harm toward her or intended to hurt her. She understands that many of the things that happened between them were misunderstandings or accidents. Lum's personality is impulsive and careless, but not anything worse, and she lets go of her anger toward Lum. This moment is important because it resolves the conflict that had existed between the two characters since childhood. Rand had spent years holding on to anger and resentment. When she finally understands Lum's true intentions, that anger disappears. Rand has a double-sided personality. When she's in a good mood or calm and happy, she has a sweet and bubbly, dainty personality. She can be very polite, affectionate, and even nurturing when she feels relaxed and comfortable. This is the side of Ron that many characters find charming. However, when she's upset, or in a bad mood, or otherwise provoked, she's vicious, forceful, and angry. When Ron becomes angry, she can turn extremely aggressive and destructive. Her personality can flip very quickly, depending on the situation. She does have some moments where she has a flat or neutral mood. She's not in either extreme 100% of the time. This makes her feel more like a real person, rather than the simple character trope. Most people do not stay in one emotional state constantly, and Ran reflects that kind of emotional variation. In the story, she is often portrayed as the ultimate feminine character, in contrast to tomboys such as Benten or Ryunosuke. Benten is very aggressive and energetic, and Ryunosuke struggles with her unique upbringing. Ran, on the other hand, presents a more traditionally feminine appearance and demeanor. She is also essentially a succubus, though I'm sure she's truly based on some obscure subtype of Oni that I know nothing about because I do not have in-depth knowledge of traditional Japanese mythology. Many characters in Urusei Yatsura are loosely inspired by folklore or supernatural creatures. Ran's ability to drain youth through kissing resembles the concept of a succubus in mythology. One thing that's been barely noticed in the final story arc is how Rei seems to show no interest in Lum or interfering with events in the final story arc, even though he learns she's getting married. He's lost all interest in Lum at this point, which is why Ran is in such a calm mood during the story, despite all the trouble she gets swept up in. In earlier parts of the story, Ran's jealousy and anger were fueled by Rei's relationship with Lum, but by the final arc, that dynamic has changed. Though this had already been indicated and alluded to earlier, such as in the Iniba arc, we see a future where Ran and Rei wind up together, so it's not really a complete surprise. The story had already hinted that Ran and Rei might eventually end up together. I'm just saying it's barely been noticed. Ran is the supporting character that best embodies the spirit of Urusei Yatsura, as she constantly causes chaos and mayhem whenever riled up and whipped into anger. Whenever something sets her off, or she concocts an elaborate scheme for revenge, she'll upturn the world around her. And that is why she embodies the spirit of that series, which is all about flawed characters causing chaos. Urusei Yatsura is not a story about perfect people, it's about characters who constantly make mistakes, misunderstand each other, and create absurd situations. Ran fits perfectly into that formula. She is emotional, unpredictable, and dramatic, but at the same time, she is also sympathetic and understandable. Ran is simultaneously nurturing, adorable, kind, and sweet, but she's also willing to stand up for herself and isn't a pushover, which is why she is such a good and entertaining character. Characters who only have one personality trait often become boring over time. Ran remains interesting because she contains multiple conflicting traits. Ran does act rashly and recklessly, and she lets things provoke her that don't warrant that reaction. She is quick to anger and lash out, but that is because she is young and immature. She does often tend to try to address or defuse the situation quietly before resorting to more aggressive action, unless she's already highly suspicious of the person, or she's been directly provoked. Her outbursts look sudden and intense, but they're rooted in insecurity. She often reacts first, and only thinks about the situation more calmly afterward. That pattern of acting impulsively, and then settling down later, reinforces the idea that she is still young and learning how to deal with her feelings. Also, since Ataru drank the elixir of youth, and Ran kissed Ataru, does that mean Ran has eternal youth now?